Some years ago, let's say before 1980, premarital agreements were illegal, void against public policy. The idea is we're not going to let the parties remove the jurisdiction of the court to decide what happens in the event of death or divorce. People got very upset with this. Legislatures finally started passing things like the Uniform Premarital Agreement, which 28 states have passed, including Oregon, allowing for premarital agreements. In other words, making them enforceable if you follow certain protocols. Full disclosure, both parties have a lawyer or know what they're signing, and there's sufficient time for them to consider it. In other words, it can't be signed an hour before you say, I do. What's happened recently, and by recently I mean in the last 5 or 10 years, there's a huge increase in the number of marital agreements being signed. It used to be, when it got started, it was primarily between people in second, third marriages who had other obligations, aging parents, children of first marriage, and so forth. And often a big distinction between one was the have spouse, one was the have not in terms of economics. Now, with people moving around so much, bi-coastal relationships and stuff, there are people that are doing premarital agreements just to be sure that they know which rules apply, saying, we want the law of Oregon, we want the law of Washington, New York, whatever it is, because frequently people, I've done at least a half a dozen where the parties are living in New York, want to move back to Oregon. So there's going to be an argument if you don't have an agreement as to which law applies, or people that are living for 2 or 3 years. One recent one was in Australia, but they intend to move back to the US. Secondly, with the people my age dying, their kids are going to inherit some money. The law about what happens to inheritance in the event of divorce is very different. In Oregon, the court has jurisdiction to divide in money that you inherit. Not true in Washington, not true in California, not true in multiple other states. So I've done many premarital agreements where that's the only issue. The parties say, look, all the law, whatever it is, whatever jurisdiction we get divorced, is fine, except that we each, whoever inherits gets to keep their inheritance. Same thing is true if the parties, typically the parents, have a going business and they don't want an ex-spouse involved in the business. So the premarital agreement might say, listen, this agreement only impacts the business, and in the case of divorce, the person who inherits or has the stock in the business gets to keep that. The court has no jurisdiction to divide it. So for all of those reasons, there are many more, and it might just be that people, there used to be a bit of a stigma on premarital agreements, such as in the 60s, there was a stigma on getting divorced. It might be partly just that stigma is diminished.